the model number, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go with it. So as we know, ITI-LETS is technological interfacing language, even that special. And normally we've been talking exclusively about LLMs and their role in HCI and computing in general. And today I wanted to bring something that was a bit different from the natural language kind of approach that it's coming with this. And I wanted to propose the idea of audiovisual language. So what is audiovisual language? Why? What is the sense of cinema? And what is also video essay? So there's a bunch of different questions. And I guess this is a very interesting discussion. And the discussion is also coming from if there's the idea of is there actually an audiovisual language, right? Could audiovisual and cinema itself be considered a language? And this is a whole discussion. And I guess the discussion starts here. So I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is the Kuleshov effect. So this was described by a guy named Kuleshov in the Soviet Union, very in the beginning of the 20th century. And he found out that if you put the picture of a man and then you put the picture of a plate, and you ask somebody what was the expression of the man, then the person will say he's hungry. But if you put the picture of a man and then you put the picture of a little girl then you ask people what the expression of the man was, they will say it's sadness. But if you put a beautiful woman instead, then the person might say that the expression is of lust. Okay. And what the Kuleshov effect is so important for is that it kind of he kind of says, okay, so a later information has an influence on previous information, right? So when you show something, this kind of changes what the perception of the previous thing comes, and this kind of start giving us an idea that through editing we could actually achieve some kind of meaning, right? And we can affect the meaning of a specific text. So then this kind of becomes a school in the Soviet Union. Of course, there's the two big schools of cinema at the beginning of the 20th century. We have the Soviets and then we have the Americans. We don't know how related were one to the other, so we don't know if these are really contiguous things. But we do know that the Soviet tradition, it really comes to do a lot. And the theory, this is a film by Sergei Eisenstein. He was one of the first theories of montage. So I guess the first question is what the fuck is montage, right? And why don't we say just simply edit? And I guess this is one of the things that really differentiates the Soviets and the Americans, this idea of montage. So montage is the idea that when you put things together, they kind of create something greater than just the parts, right? So Sergei Eisenstein will go on to actually theorize what montage is, and to do this, he will come from the traditions of music and poetry and literature and basically most of the narrative arts or the time-based arts, and kind of try to transpose this into cinema. So the first one thing then he will say is okay, so he said okay, montage is metric, so it comes from the metrics of music. So he made this kind of metric montage. So this is actually it still has a metric, right? But he also thinks of the idea, metric, in music you will go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So actually this is actually also metric, so it has a constant so no, it's metric, because the second type of montage that Einstein described is the rhythmical montage. But rhythmical is not so much about the duration of shots as it is about the movement on shots and the way the shots behave, right? So, and then he also describes, okay, there's a tonal montage also coming from music, right? So it's tonal montage is about how the emotion that is transmitted on the image. And then he also says there's an overtonal montage where it's kind of like the congruence of all of these factors with movement and like rhythmic and everything coming together kind of like creates an idea. And he then says that there's another type of montage, which is the intellectual montage, which is like when you actually like get to make a whole idea of like an intellectual idea out of just putting image together. So this is silent cinema. This is 1925. This film is a classic of cinema. It's called The Battle of Potemkin. And this one scene is very well regarded as one of the most relevant scenes in the history of cinema. So here they are preparing the ship, and then it's a battleship, and then this happens. So just people there, and then like the military come, right? So it is the royal army. They come and they basically start bashing on people. So there's like you already see like a bunch of confluence. So there's like direction, right, from up to up down, and then like also he is like using this like right to left axis. So you're gonna see like the army is coming from the right to the left, and the people is going to the other side. And like this is like this might seem a bit simple for us. Maybe nowadays it's actually stop. So you see like people is going in this direction. So this kind of like creates an axis in which like we know where the action is happening. This is actually going in the opposite axis. So this is like very like the beginning of the idea that could be not only ideas through montage, but also kind of like a grammar of montage. And like I guess like in the middle of the 20th century, we're gonna talk about a lot about grammar. And like this is something that we still see today.
It's not a silent movie, right?
Yeah, this is silent movie.
I can hear it actually. I can hear it. Yeah, without the sound, yeah. You can feel it.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Like it's very intense. And it's very well done, like through the image. I guess like also like this era, like the 20s, were like a moment where like cinema was really developing as a language until like sound appears. And like when sound appears, like cinema becomes a lot about sound itself, about like the words. No, until 1927.
Not even in music.
So this is like one of the later, this is like later silent cinema, right? I mean, music was normally played live.
Okay, yeah.
So sometimes like some films will be, especially like big productions, will be accompanied by music sheet. Yeah, I guess so, but like synchronizing is a bit hard. There's also there's like a bunch of experiments on like how to use music at the time. But there is no synchronization. The only way to synchronize correctly is like having a pianist there with a music sheet. So this will be like the best strategy.
No, just don't music, you know.
Yeah. So like starting from like maybe the 30s, like what we start seeing, and I didn't bring an example, is like, but I know like you're gonna be able to relate because like Netflix still uses, television still uses it, cinema still uses it. And it's the idea that you have one person speaking on one side and the other person speaking on the other side, and then the camera kind of like cuts in between them, which is like the shot and reverse shot, right? Shot, reverse shot. One is looking at the other one, and they're speaking like one is looking to their left and the other one is looking to the right. So you have a congruence, and like the camera is always on one side. So it was kind of established that the idea that like cinema has a grammar, right? Kind of like how language has grammar, specifically written language has specific grammar. And this idea is of course going to be rebated, especially in the beginning of the 60s. Okay, so I actually wanted to look to show a bit of how intellectual montage is. So at the very end of this sequence, which is the steps of Odessa, we have the battleship kind of like firing against the palace, and then you have these three shots. Those three shots are very interesting.
What was this 4K?
No, this was 35mm print, which is very good quality. This 4K restoration is actually very bad. It's kind of like doing with artificial intelligence. But it's what I found online. So you see these three images, the lion rising, they are represent of the people of Russia rising, right? They awake like the lion, right? And this is what Einstein kind of like meant with like intellectual montage, which is like how can you convey like complex ideas and metaphorical ideas through the use of cuts. So there we go. We got like to the establishing of like a film grammar, especially since the appearance of sound in the 30s. And then like this is like in the 60s, we start like seeing a lot of experimentation. And then we have like this one film, which is À bout de souffle in French. Breathless is the title in English. Hello, Beatrice. Thank you for joining us. We're talking a bit about the history, just for context, we're talking a bit about the history of montage in cinema and how kind of film grammar and audiovisual language were kind of established so that we can go on and discuss. So we have this sequence, they got these people rob a car and they're just going on, and then you start seeing something very interesting. It's like sometimes there's like cuts that are not specifically in this shot. So you're gonna see there's like a sequence shot, so it's like a constant shot, and then it cuts in the middle of the shot. You saw that? Actually, I didn't let you see. So you're gonna see like he is actually going there, and there is this cut on the same shot. Bam, cut. You saw that? It kind of like express passing of time, but it kind of looks like a mistake. Again, a cut in the middle of the shot. There's another one. And there's a cut again. So there's very minimal cuts. It's actually very minimal, right? So you can like barely see it here. Is that? So like what these cuts turn to like why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? It's kind of like confusing, right? But at the same time, the 50s, because of the appearance of small cameras, 60mm cameras after the war and stuff, like we basically start also seeing the rise of documentary, of direct documentary. So this kind of looks like documentary, because in documentary, there's like a bunch of glitches and like the small stuff that's happening. And then like fiction cinema was also taking kind of like advantage of these conventions that were established on documentary to actually convey ideas on fiction cinema. In this case, passing of time and also engagement with reality, right? Because he could just not doing it, but he was kind of doing it. So this is the kind of experimental moment for cinema. Things were changing. Pretty interesting. I'm just going to show 2 examples. So like, let's go to the upper 20th century.
Just a question, they had
Yes.
just one camera, right?
This is like 60mm cameras, so they are small for the time, maybe for our days.
So everything recorded by one camera.
This was recorded by one camera. It was a Bolex camera. It's a camera like this big.
Okay.
But it can be operated by one person. Yeah, that's true. So it's like I want to see if I can share my sound. Yeah, so I want to look at 2 examples before like opening discussion, and we can like think about this. One is this famous film from 1983, which is Sans Soleil, Without Sun. And this is very interesting because it's kind of like an essay that Chris Marker, which is this French director, he does this trip to Japan. And he films a bunch of things in Japan, but he makes this narrative in which you have like this travel layer that's kind of like an alien that's kind of like in there sending letters to this woman, which is actually the narrator of the film. So there's like a whole fictionalized layer on top of it that kind of like give like a solid idea to the film, which otherwise be just like a
And they had the color, right? It's like 83 and they had color. It's not black and white.
Maybe it's colored.
Or maybe it's color.
No, this is color film. This is like,
83?
yeah, I mean, color first appeared Ektachrome, I think it appeared in the 50s, actually. And then by the time of the 70s, you already have like simple, but like on the 50s, it was very complicated to do like color film. On the 80s, it was already like something more common. I don't know if this is like 60 millimeters probably, but also 80s is like the time that where video is going to appear. So Chris Marker is going to engage later a lot with video. I'm going to show actually the use of video of another director. But this, of course, is already telling us something a bit about 80s is the decade where video appears, but this is already taking us about some like I'm kind of doubting now if this is video. I don't think so. It's like this is kind of like also so aware of like the fact that a camera exists, right? Like the fact that people is becoming aware of cameras is changing how people is using audiovisual language. Right, so like we just saw like before this, we actually were seeing like we were seeing the film of Godard, and for us, these like jump cuts in the middle of a shot is not really something like much radical because we see this every day in like TikTok. But at the time, people were not very aware of what a camera was or a camera was doing.
C'est Jean-Luc. Je les ai recommencés comme un entier, à évaluer mon collègue. Au départ, c'est un jeu commun, une espèce de batterie anti-écologique. Mais il s'agit d'essonner dès qu'elle prend la tête, les créatures dont je n'ai pas encore déterminé si ce sont des néopasteurs ou des vieux. Maintenant, voici la variante japonaise. À la place des bestiaux, de vagues têtes humaines identifiées par une étiquette. Au sommet,
Yeah, so the reason I choose this fragment is because kind of like the burn of interaction, right? So it's also like we're seeing like the rise of interaction in history. So this is like probably also a pivotal moment. Cameras are appearing and like subjectivity appears as well, right? So here is not anymore only about facts or like time itself, but also like there's a character. He's speaking about how what he thinks and how he feels, and he likes owls. This is actually one of the signature things of Chris Marker. Of his films have owls and cats. So yeah, you can feel like this is changing. Cinema is changing. It's becoming subjective. It's becoming also like kind of like drawing inspiration from essay writing, from diaries writing, right? So it's like kind of becoming a more maybe a bit more of a it's kind of becoming more experimental kind of way to approach to ideas. So not anymore like this kind of like grandiloquent ideas of intellectual montage of Eisenstein or only by cuts, but more like a direct approach to the world. So video cameras appear, and then like a decade later, we also had the appearance of nonlinear montage. So these are very important stuff for film. And this is like a film of Harun Farocki, which is a great German video essayist. And this is like something I just found. I was looking for some Harocki fragment to show, and then like disappear on the online.
Heute kann ich kaum ein Wort schreiben.
So this is not a film of Harocki itself. It's like some video that some guy online did. I don't really know this guy, but it's kind of like he took Harocki's film and he did this. So let's just see it.
Heute kann ich kaum ein Wort schreiben, wenn nicht zugleich ein Bild auf dem Schirm zu sehen ist. Oder vielmehr auf beiden Schirmen. Bild auf dem Schirm zu sehen ist. Oder vielmehr auf beiden Schirmen.
I can hardly write an image these days unless there's a word on the screen at the same time. Actually, those.
This is Harocki, right? And this is this guy that's making this video. And as you can see, he's like doing his work on videotapes.
Yeah.
So he's editing from videotapes. But now in the 2000s, you're working on this interface. So no longer you're doing linear editing where you would just like put things on like a tape one after the other, but you can actually put things one on top of the other, and you can put things one side of the other. You can put so this also changed a bit the whole idea of the image, because it's no longer about this ontological perception that we have in the world, which is like cinema was doing before, which is like, let's recreate the vision, the human vision, etc. But it's like, okay, cinema can be itself kind of like a sheet of paper where you can write and reroute and put on top and like kind of like do a collage. So it's kind of becoming something a bit different.
Today, only words or sometimes music comment on images. Video essays still mostly amount to words commenting on images.
Of course, Rumer's films are extraordinary at one extreme.
Yeah, so he's showing us a video essay of nowadays. So he's showing us the video essay of Farocki in the 80s. Harun is thinking that this video essay is completely going to change due to new technologies. And he's now showing us video essays nowadays that is just like the same motion. Right? Sorry for the bad word.
Conversation.
Sometimes music comments on images. But only rarely do images comment on images. In this video, I used part of an additional film and an image of the text that comments on the film. Looking at Claire's scene as if we're witnessing transformation of image into an idea, sensuality into sensibility, a bit of furtive voyeurism into obsessive illusion. But the text itself is an image. The text describes the experience of watching the film, but it itself is a way to experience watching the film. It's the visible evidence of the protagonist's folly, and of ours as well, and of cinema's most of all. Or is it not the fundamental folly of cinema to depend on surfaces for the expression of essences? These images comment on each other. Together, they also comment on our experience of them.
Hier bin ich dabei. Wieder.
Okay. I think this is what I wanted to show and share about the idea of establishing a possible film language. To repeat myself. Yeah, so about the possibility of talking about audiovisual language, where it is, if there is a grammar, if it can be established through conventions, right? So we saw that at some point in the history of cinema, conventions were established. We still use those conventions, but that there's like a potence of using images and like just like Harun Farooqi was explaining us there, when this guy was commenting on Farooqi's ideas. Images could like comment on images, music can comment on images, right? So like sound and image and images can like do all of this very complex kind of intertwine of ideas. So I think it's enough of me talking. Now I would like to know if this kind of like create any ideas on you, if you'd like to comment anything, and then we can continue the discussion.
Do you think that right now AI can actually detect this kind of grammar?
Oh, I don't think AI has enough training with video to actually having yet. And the kind of video that AI is being trained on is mostly for recreating video.
Well, if you do have the theory like written on the internet, then it can train itself and it can detect it. So how much actually get?
Hello. Yeah, so one thing I guess like it's a big oh my God. Hello Yang. Okay. So one thing I think it's a bit kind of something that you can see is definitely like a limitation for current AI system on video generation is that there is no montage. So you can only generate shots, right? And this is what most things are doing. Like so you're like just creating one shot and then like you can maybe there's a human still like doing the montage. So I've seen like platforms that kind of like generating different shots and put them together to create a montage for you. So I don't know if like this is already very aware of this possibilities, but actually like LLMs are actually training a bunch of data from films, like scripts and like transcripts and things like this. So I do think that at some point there is like a notion of montage on LLMs.
Well, I think like my question is different because you're talking about video generation and I'm talking about video analyzing.
Yeah.
So do you think that it can actually read or analyze the grammar that you're talking about?
I mean, it could, right?
Because when I was thinking, sort of on more on the line of what Noah was saying, is that much of this sensibility comes from the director's perspective and the editor's perspective in these movies, and that comes from a lot of experience. So what AI can do, especially in terms of AI specifically, not that I think that can be applied to everything, but what these new technologies can do is like almost not fast track, but gather all this knowledge, this visual knowledge from film and art, and almost like the way that we are analyzing how the shots are cut, how certain editors and producers would cut the shots to have a certain kind of emotion. I'm a big fan of those 50, 60, 70 thrillers of how they created the tension and like the highs and lows of in the movies. So maybe what AI can do or what these technologies can do is make that analysis of creating new taxonomies and new genres to play with, like another type of toolbox. So okay, to create like some kind of I don't know, more dramatic, like more drama, or like to add some tension. This is the grammar that you can use on this type of like the analysis of all these types of media, from more experimental to more like cinematic commercial movies. this is how it has been done from all of this training. Because it also comes from sensibility and having access to culture and different types of culture.
Sure.
So if AI can like just. Like,
Gather the knowledge.
yeah, gather all the knowledge and like almost give us like an encyclopedia of. Okay, like if you want to create like this extension, this is how you can do it, and these are the references that you can use. And often like more of an instructor and less and less like copying someone's style. So those are the things that interest me more in use of technology and AI is how can we use this to as a tool to make ourselves better and to facilitate like the calculator. The calculator was created to make us do math faster. How can we use AI to just make a new set of access to vocabulary in this type of movie and film art? Like how can we have access to things that we have just
But doing the montage in the AI,
No, she's basically
Yeah.
talking about suggestions or like, yeah, like kind of like steps, so what you can do. So if I want, for instance, to create like this shot, how can I do it? So it will give you like the steps of what you can do.
because I'm very cognizant that I have a lot of more than like not as much as I used to have. But I'm kind of knowledgeable about the global North culture because that's where not only where I grew up, but also where all the influences that were easily accessible to me were. But there are a lot of other influences that I don't even know about. A couple of months ago, I was rewatching Korean Scotty, and I was like just blown away again of how incredible were the ways that they shot that movie, the acting of that movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you haven't seen it in a while, just go and watch it again because it's amazing. And sometimes it feels like, yeah, it's my fault because I didn't go and dig a little deeper to other cultures, but at the same time, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not saying it's not my fault, but sometimes maybe AI can have like this reach to go to other cultures, especially in the global south, that I on my own or if my influences are harder to get. And we are all busy and we all have stuff. So maybe that can create that vocabulary to show me new things that, okay, like you want to do something?
Let me interrupt you.
Oh,
No, I just want to like call attention to like the last film we watched, which was Karaoke's film, and like how he was like saying that a new technology, like video technology, was going to change the way like we mix images, and like it was like it probably did, right? But I guess like for most people it did not, right? And for most video essays and for most the audiovisual language, like it did not really change much from the 50s, you know? Like I think most content on Netflix and online is actually kind of like using the same principle of montage that we were like having 70 years ago. So we can be.
Do you think that's because now things are made to profit?
no, maybe it doesn't have it. It's just reputation.
Yeah, but for I
And
remember.
reputation is like a shit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
it's not a good copy.
like that Squid Game creator, he only wanted to do one season, and because Netflix offered him like shit ton of money, he was like, okay, I'll create a new one. And that's why he has a second season, and now it's going to be a third season, and he was very.
What's your point of view with the first season? Do you like it? Did you like it? The first season?
I staged with the first season because I thought it was fresh. The second season is like just an iteration. But he was very transparent about like, yeah, they offered me a lot of money.
Even the platform movie. The first one and second one is exactly the same.
I didn't watch
You
it.
didn't. It's exactly the same.
Exactly. So it was like, okay, we want the same formula. okay, you're offering me like this bag of money, I'm doing it the same thing that you want asked me to do. So my question is like, is it just because not us, but as us as a consumer? And people
That's one
who are
that's one reason.
The industry, right? The effect of the industry, definitely, but I also think like it's like the established in the 50s, and I didn't go deep into like explaining like film grammar, but
Yeah.
like there was this idea that there's like this grammar, there's these rules, and they make it very easy to show, but like I think most films and series, and like 90% of what we see is like shot in a specific way.
Yeah.
And it's actually very convenient, you know, because you have normally in cinema you have two people talking, so you will do the same process to kind of film this. Well,
And one more thing, I think the taste of the audience has been changed. People doesn't like to see the movie. They just want to spend like few time and let out at some point. But the thing is, now these days, the movie just making it just not good. Not even that. It's like
But that's the problem. That's actually like what I wanted to say. Don't you notice that lately there has been kind of like saturation of, I don't know, ideas. Like we keep right now like redoing the old stuff that were done in the 90s. Like literally right now we don't see an actual like
nostalgia of it.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, but there is basically like no fresh ideas that we feel like, yeah, there's saturation of ideas that we're reaching right now, and it might be affected by actually like, yeah, our frequent use of AIs or LLMs, it might be, but because like, yeah, finding a movie in the last 5 years that actually.
yeah, at some point, like most animations right now, like,
I just point you one, I've been very surprised with A24s, like what they have launched. I think they have been pretty daring considering like how mainstream they are. Like,
Yeah, but I mean like.
it's one production company.
Yeah. Exactly, and look on the other side, on the last, like, from, for instance, like 2010 to 2020, and then you're going to
Yeah.
see like literally, okay, so how many were there and how many?
Yeah, no, I agree.
yeah, but yeah, you're right, like about like this Disney animation films. So now they're doing everything live action. And it's like you're just like, you know, you're just like making these amazing animation films into just like live actions. It's like no new ideas, right? And I do agree in a way with this, not completely. Probably there's like some new things always happening around. But I do think like maybe we haven't like reached on like maybe we're like in a point where there's like a crisis of creativity and a crisis for cinema. I guess cinema's already been through a bunch of crises.
okay, I have a question. What
Yeah.
do you mean by new? Everything new has been already made.
No, never,
No?
no, that's creativity.
Yeah.
You can never get like too creative, like there's always something new.
And there's always new stories that you can tell, because like, I think that there have been, for the longest time, the stories that we've been telling are always the kind of focused on the same demographic, which is usually people that look like me. Like honestly, basically,
Yeah.
people that have the same skin tone that look like me, that have experiences that look like me. I feel like there has kind of been a shift, and that's for the better. The issue for me right now is I try not to go for like the award season, at least Oscars or that type of award season, because I feel like that's not even representative of even the indie part of the Oscars or anything like that. It's not even representative of what I would like to do. I watched that Cat movie. I don't know if you watched the movie. Because my family is Irish, so I'm kind of familiar with the whole Irish situation there. I find it hilarious, and it's based on, yes, a white population that's also disadvantaged because of a bunch of historical reasons. And it's a very funny movie. It has like the perfect amount of humor in it. I find it hilarious, and it's a new, fresh story that actually got to the Oscars. So I feel like it's not every type of movie that goes there. But I feel like some things are able to break through. It's not easy. We also need to, as consumers, invest more into just going to indie cinema, and just actually going, which is also a very big commitment because tickets for
People is not going to the film, there's a big decline in box office, like all over the world.
And because
So
it's very
we're-
expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive, people don't have money, and after the pandemic, I think there's a lot of shifting towards digitality, which already was happening, Netflix already existed. I guess like new generations, they hardly go to cinema, like very,
I
like
love
very
it.
few. Yeah,
But you know, I think that it's the type of cinemas, like the actual space. There's one cinema that maybe you guys would like. It's called Nimash, and it's close to Salvania. And it's like
Oh,
Can I share my point of view?
you know
I
how
was in India.
interrupt me
No, that's
all
fine.
the time.
I was in India like 6 years. Every Saturday or Sunday, I have been in a cinema. Every Saturday. 2007 up to
Yeah,
2011.
exactly. That
But here, I have been in a cinema just once. Just one time, and I'm sorry, I didn't like the place. And yeah, but the cinema in India
Go-
was big and
I don't like big.
no, the quality of the sound, the quality, everything was.
Yeah, it was really. That's like go to. I cannot recommend it enough more. Like you have Cinemateca, which is like the museum of cinema in Lisbon, but there's also Nimas, which is like a 60s type of cinema.
It's like
There are
independent
no
cinema.
openers, there are no. It's like it's a velvet seats.
and it's like
How
independent
much is
European
that?
cinema.
The price of this.
I don't know.
There's
You
discount
buy
for
it
students.
afterwards,
There's a
like
discount for, I think it's
there's
6 euros.
discounts, there's a whole thing.
6 euros.
The experience there, and they always have like all movies, like every month they have like, okay, I watched there 2001 Space Odyssey, like amazing. So it's like one of those types of for me, going to the movies is an experience. I cannot go to the movies if there's people eating next to me.
Yeah.
Just right, I'm very picky. That's the type of if I go to the movies, it's an experience. For me, personally.
But you'd never go to like the open air cinemas?
I like open air cinemas, but
It's a
Okay.
different experience.
but
Can
there's
can I hijack the conversation once again? Okay, so this was very interesting. Like, and this conversation went a lot into cinema and our experience of cinema, and I think it's great that because I guess like cinema is part of our lives, right? Like
Yeah.
since we were born, I guess especially like in our generations and for the past few generations, I think this has been a very important like human experience. Right, so what I would like to try to conclude, and this is going to be more like we're trying to jump to a few conclusions, is like what is the implications of this knowledge into HCI, right? So what can we get from like these ideas into HCI? So I'm gonna throw like a few ideas I have. So the first one is like our users are already related to a grammar, to a specific kind of like grammar, and very used to a specific type of cinema, right? The cinema that's showing Netflix, the cinema that's produced by big corporations and stuff. So they are like most users are already like very used to a specific thing. And yet, I think nowadays people is getting used to another kind of audiovisual, which is like I didn't introduce it, but it's like TikTok and like YouTube and like a different kind of experience, which is not conventional cinema. It can be very conventional in a way, but it is also more personal, more subjective. It has to do with our making of videos, and it's very different from like film tradition. So I guess like when we are dealing with users, they're already related to cinema. They already know and have expectations of what a narrative and montage can be. But yeah, I think our users are also changing. They're more experienced on interaction and stuff. And then I also think that like these ideas of montage, etc., can also have exert an influence into we making interfaces, right? Or we making like games, or like we making like interactive experiences, in that we can actually think that not only is the narrative that we do that provokes ideas, but it is the way that we present images and present sounds and present things one after the other and on top of the other that we can like create a deeper experience, which is probably a bit also different than cinema because we have also interaction going on. So I don't know if any of you would like to contribute on like any ideas on that, how this can influence HCI.
Have a question
Mhm.
that I want to ask you regarding that. So I think the major thing that happened related to HCI, related to cinema, is when Netflix tried to do the interactive series.
Mhm.
Yeah, what do you think about it?
Oof, so there's like a whole field which is like interactive films, specifically interactive documentaries. I will, if you're interested in this, I will really point out to the National Film Board of Canada. They have been like funding interactive films for like 20 years or something. So they have like a very good like open catalog to look at. I think this is very interesting, and this is like really changing cinema. So like
do you
this,
think that affects them?
not yet completely. I yeah.
Control, because I don't know if you were thinking about the that's like your scripted episode.
That's how it started, but then it was, yeah.
Because in terms of montage, what montage does, it guides the viewer into looking at other ways of seeing. So what if you extrapolated the idea of what montage is, of montage as a way of the viewer to perceive the scene, but giving the user the agency for them to decide how they want to how they want to view the scene. For example, if this was being filmed and the camera was here filming me or filming from my point of view, maybe the viewer in the movie would like to not be following my life, but following one of your lives. So that could transform the experience. Could use the idea of montage or of the of part of like assembling and editing the movie into the interactive part. You know what I mean? Like using the expanding the concept of montage is to interaction.
I would like to hear what one.
I think actually what you're saying reminds me that, don't you think that right now, like the cinema is focusing on this perspective way too much, that actually right now, instead of focusing on the protagonist, you have a lot of movies that's showing the antagonist point of view. So you do have actually a lot of movies right now from the perspective of the antagonist and why he became that way.
I guess
I'm very interested in
also-
in that part actually. So.
again, also like discussion where we're having like the first discussion we were having was like why people is like still doing like watching the same stuff, right? It's because the industry is doing it, or it's because actually like viewers are very like
They want to.
they don't want to put extra effort on what they watch, right? So like there's a bunch of laziness on the public, right? And like people is like already so used to one idea of like what a film should be, they just want to watch the film. They just want to have like expectations and want the films to meet their expectations. So in a way, I think this is one of the reasons why interactive films are not catching up so well. But also because I guess there's video games that already kind of like do this kind of like. It's not the same, yeah, it's not the same, yeah.
That Netflix episode of Black Mirror, it was taken out this week off the catalog because I think they're redoing it. And it drew a lot of like news articles about, okay, this is the last time that you will be able to watch Bandersnatch on Netflix. If you haven't, go check it out. It was one of the most watched episodes because people were eager to be able to make their choices. So of course you control the choice as an editor, but you can create like multiple scenarios. So maybe it's like it's a movie that can be can have like 4 paths, like 4 protagonists, and then maybe some users would like thing to be followed through. The natural course, others would be more interesting.
Are you aware of this video game that's called Hair Story?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's a very interesting video game. Like you have an interface, which is kind of like like a computer, and then you can like look for like concepts, and you start like seeing this interview that was done like through several years to a woman, but it also only shows like 5 videos at a time, depending on the words you type.
yeah.
So you start like listening to this interview in like non-chronological order. So it's kind of like a film. It is just not chronological like films are. So like every person kind of like has to find the words, and like you're eager kind of like to go and look for them, and like so it's really interesting because this kind of for me this is kind of like when I played this it was like, oh, it's kind of like a film. It's just not in the form of a film. So it was very interesting.